Thank you. Yeah, welcome also from my side. My name is Christoph Kirchberger. I'm from Vienna University of Technology, from spatial planning and regional planning, from the Research Center for Traffic System Planning. So, long title, let's say. But I'm in my main occupation, I'm coordinator of the aspern Mobility Lab. I will give some insights into the Mobility Lab itself, projects on site, and maybe some ideas about the things you're working on later on. Let's see if there is something which is interesting for you. I will rush through a bit through the presentation that we have more time for Q&A later on. So I will start with innovation. So I think you are interested in innovation, basically, I think. So talking about the aspern Mobility Lab, the aspern Mobility Lab is an innovation lab, which is a new kind of instrument of the Ministry for Climate Action. It is pretty new since 1 week. We know that we can call it like that officially. And we are funded by the ministry. I think it's a really nice title. In English, it sounds even better. We are... Yes, exactly. The Mobility Lab in Seestadt Aspern, we are operative since 2017. And the idea is that this Mobility Lab on site is not just a research project, doing research on mobility or anything else for 2 years and then it's gone. The idea is that this is a long-term research infrastructure which is building up knowledge also on a long run. We are a team of around 30 researchers and practitioners. I'm really happy to work with all of them. We are from 10 different professional backgrounds: architects, landscape planner, philosopher, sociologist, spatial planner like myself. I'm spatial planner by education. And this is always great fun, but sometimes a bit hard to find the same language also. So this is just a part of this big team also. From last summer. This picture is also taken in Seestadt Aspern, where Aspern Mobility Lab is located also. Just some partners which, let's say, are not so relevant, some company partners also, partners from the on-site stakeholders there. And then what is, I think, interesting, we from the traffic system planning from the Technology University, and then we have the colleagues, actually here is the professor, Hilda Teljogo. She's the head of the multidisciplinary design and user research group also. So we have, let's say, us from the Faculty of Architecture and Spatial Planning, and then the colleagues from the computer science, actually, and we come together in the aspern Mobility Lab and work together there on site. What are our goals there in the aspern Mobility Lab? First of all, it's to foster innovation, but to do that in a co-creative way. So not we, the researchers, are sitting there and typing something into a Word document and trying to be innovative, but much more to be outside and work with stakeholders and people on site. Open up knowledge. So we are collecting knowledge through a lot of research projects, but we don't keep that knowledge. We provide it to international partners, to delegations, and we try to structure that knowledge also to make it usable for a bigger group, not just ourselves, our research partners, but even in a more wider sense. And the last one, which is a high goal, I think, always, is that we want to support and guide a societal transformation process on site. So we as researchers, let's say, are going this way towards a post-fossil mobility culture on site, together with the users on site also. We are observing that, but also, let's say, bringing in new knowledge, bringing in new innovations, and always staying in contact over the time with the people on site. This is, let's say, our basic approach, what we are doing. Yeah, I made this slide more complex than it was already. So what we are trying basically is to open up this term of research community. I don't know what pops up in your mind when you think about research community. Maybe you think about some researchers with hats, funny hats, doing research. We think that in a much wider sense. So we involve users and inhabitants. We involve companies and public administration. And then, yeah, we involve the so-known research community in one research community which should work on the same eye level. I mean, that's a really hard approach, we think. And we see down there how they can really work. I always tell that story that I made these lines 3 years ago when I did the first time this presentation. Not knowing maybe that how hard it will be to connect the lines actually, like between this single two of them or all three of them even. So it's always the question how they really can work together, how a researcher can talk on the same eye level with an inhabitant, having the same language, or which tools we need for that, which methods also. I will come to that in a moment also. And all that should lead to innovation, basically. But I split it up for you, and I think this is a very important thing you should always keep in mind, no matter which project you are doing. Because in the moment, if we talk about innovation, we most of the time talk about that thing. And that's not enough. So it's really important that so technical innovation. So a new application which has a new interesting modus inside, or something new programmed, a new form of chair, I don't know what. But we much more also need social innovation, so much more looking into what happens between people also, which kind of new mechanism we can find between people also. And for sure then we maybe also need a technical innovation to make that happen. But still, we always have to combine these things, or an organizational innovation, so especially if we look into city administration, into governments also, we much more need also that technical innovation can be used at the end, or is used also by companies or by cities also, or public administration basically. So I think that keep that in mind and reflect on that also. You find a lot of more detailed information also in the internet if you Google on that. Just some pictures, I have to keep it short a bit. We try to be outside to reach different user groups. We work with design thinking methods. So Professor Hilda Teliogo, she's actually researching, she's sitting here again, coincidence. She's researching since 30 years on design thinking methods, also bringing in all this knowledge on that into the project also. We also work with the design games, for example. This is one game the colleagues developed. They are playing it in Thessaloniki, I think, on a conference. And what is very important and is getting a bigger and bigger puzzle piece for us is working with students. So we bring spatial planning and computer science students to the site, to Seestadt Aspern, to work on site, to work on real life challenges, to work with inhabitants, and to present their ideas to inhabitants and be confronted also with very critical people living there. And we see that this is a really interesting prototyping lab for us, let's say. So students starting off small projects in half a year, and we taking them with us then into research projects and taking also their tools into our everyday work on site also with the people. So which topics we work on, I keep it short. Active mobility, so everything around walking, cycling, scooter, skateboarding. Shared mobility is a very wide term also, from the application to the different tools. And then first, last, my logistics. And in the moment, we have 25 research projects, which are, let's say, embedded into the Aspern Mobility Lab, and we are supporting them on the go. So something visual in between. I hope this works. So if we do innovation on site, we also have to know what changes in people's behavior also. So that's why we do a big study on with people who are, let's say, asked to participate, randomly chosen, and they are using a smartphone application to track their mobility over 1 week, traveling around and doing their stuff as they always do it. And this application is tracking their mode also. So that application knows, okay, he was driving with a car automatically also. And we get a good picture, let's say, how Seestadt Aspern, I will come to Seestadt in a moment also, because you are maybe curious, how they're moving around. And so we can see changes also in the behavior of people living there also, if we bring in new innovations or new technologies also. And I can go on here. So also myself, I'm using it all the time. So this is, for example, my way today in the morning. So you know where I live now, roughly, in Vienna, with the bike to the train station, Vienna main station, then taking the train, arriving in Salzburg, and then coming with the local train. And the application automatically, let's say, recognized all the stops and everything on the go. And this is really valuable data for us as mobility researchers, because we can really look into the patterns, how people change at certain points, which modes they're using also over the whole week. So now let's come to Seestadt Aspern. This is the site we are working in with the aspern.mobil lab. It's 10 kilometers out of Vienna, out of the city center, so really at the edge. 15 kilometers per bike, which I do sometimes, biking back most of the time. It's the biggest urban development site in Europe, actually. This is the first part which is finished already. 7,500 people are living there now in the moment. Yeah, and that's basically our test bed. This is our, not playground, it's not the best word maybe, but this is, let's say, our growing test bed also. So you see, this is only the half of the whole project. So into the north, there is still the second half, and it will be developed over time, over the next 10 years still. So we will have new people moving there, people with new mobility behaviors, new public spaces, new types of city spaces also, and connected with that, new challenges also in mobility. So now we have challenges with the school, for example, and in the future we will have other things to work on and research on together with the people living there. Just some numbers, keep it short there. The target is to have 20,000 inhabitants living there and 20,000 working places. But let's keep it short on that and come to the mobility concept. These are the 6 puzzle pieces which are really essential for making it happen at such so much at the edge of the city to have still this dense urban development also. First of all, bringing the subway there. I will have some picture later on. Then second, making a dense city, so city of short distances, that everything is reachable through walking, cycling. Then have a restriction for motorized traffic in certain areas also. So there are some certain streets that cars can enter, but quite a big part is where they cannot enter. Then additional mobility options. So if we ban cars or make it not easy to access there, we need other options like bike sharing. I will come to that. And then where we come in, involve citizens also in bringing in new ideas on mobility or showing challenges they're facing in every day and bringing in research and pilot projects, like on that picture, the autonomous shuttle in Seestadt Aspern. Just some pictures, what I've been talking about. So this was the subway arriving there, already going there 1 year before people moved there. So it was a really smart move, I think, that if people come there and visit the construction site of their future flat, they come with subway and they see, okay, it's easy reachable. It's not like something where I need a car. It will be easy to move around there. So this was an important move, I think, just to see the difference now with the subway and the first part being finished. Also some big companies which moved already there. Skip that. And yeah, trying to build what we understand is this European city, like dense city, full of functions, livable. It doesn't look like on that picture. But still, at certain moment it is, because we have a quite regular rhythm of the city now, because most of the people living there, they are young families. So that's why in the daytime it's a bit empty still. Yeah. So following young Gail, an architect, starting, let's say, with the life we want to see in cities, coming to public space, and then, let's say, defining the city around, so turning it around a bit as we were used to work on. This is the master plan, the basic one, defining certain access through the city with a certain identity also, and having an overall strategy also on public space, how public space should look like, how it should be used, which functions should be there. So this is the first managed shopping street, so an outdoor shopping center, which made it possible to have, with the first people moving there, already all shops provided, so people don't come to the idea to even drive away and do their shopping. Just some impressions from the streetscapes, which I find mostly quite great, but the only trouble we have is that most of the areas are, let's say, sealed. So in talking about climate change, we have to change something on that. Just, yeah, the garages, not each building has a garage. I find that very important. So not in each building you can take the elevator, go down to your garage and drive out of the city. You have to go down, go out in public space, walk 100 meters maybe, and then get your car from the garage also. Also redefining the idea of what is a garage actually. So a garage can have some cultural functions. This is actually our mobility lab down here. It can have, like here, they have like sports fields on the top and so on, mixing all these functions into these normally very monofunctional buildings also. There's also a concept paper on this idea of hybrid high garages also. All these mobility options are funded through a mobility fund. So the local building providers, they pay into a mobility fund a certain amount. I think in the moment there are 1.5 million in that one. And a lot of things can be financed through that, like the bike sharing, cargo bike sharing, also a lot of marketing activities also to promote sustainable modes of transport in Seestadt Aspern. Just some pictures from the bike sharing system and so on. It was the first fully automated bike sharing system. We see that it's very important for people because it's really easy accessible. They go with their card, you have an NFC card, just tap it there and get the bike. And it costs, I think, €1 for the first hour, so really not so much. And also what we do together with partner from another university, do new citizen mobility marketing. So it's very important that if new people move there, you have to inform them about the options they have and inform them about alternatives they have. So they were provided with material around on public transport, on the bike sharing. There was a mobility calculator, information material, also a public transport test ticket, I think for 3 days at least. And I think we will go on with that in the future steps. But I think there will be a certain change because I think we are searching for a more creative approach. You see, it feels a bit dry still, and like it is used to be done already in the last years. But I think we need a certain kick in the future. So if you have some ideas, let's say how to easily reach this group of new people moving there, I'm open to discuss that also. I hope now I come to the point which is interesting for you here. I'm not sure if I understand right in the talks I had. So the basic question is, let's say, if you like changing mobility behavior, mobility patterns here on site, we have to talk about multimodality. So how we bring people to use more modes than only their car to move here. Yeah. So they have to shift from this easy move, taking the car key, going down to the garage and driving here, to this idea of taking different modes on one way also. So shown on the map from taking the car and driving here in 14 minutes to taking the bus, then the S-Bahn maybe, and then still walk also. Yeah, this is not an easy task. We know that. I just want to give you some ideas or some puzzle pieces which can be helpful for that. So a basic thing for, let's say, this, we saw that there is like this walking, we have to walk, let's say, from the station to where we have to come to. So we need attractive infrastructure for this last mile active mobility. Yeah, we need space, but we also need interesting public space. Yeah, it's not just about there's a wide walkway to go, but it also has to be interesting to walk there on an everyday basis also. And then we need a physical link of modes at the mobility points. Yeah, so we need to connect these modes, make them easy to change from one mode to the other, from the bike to the public transport, from the car sharing to the subway. So for example, this mobility hub in Vienna is not the best example because you have this mobility point here, but the subway is 100 meters away, and that's too far. Yeah, this is no good, let's say, physical link. And also in the people's mind, this is not one hub, let's say. But the hub can be something really easy. It can be a car sharing and bike rack, and already that, let's say, can serve as a mobility point also. So this was this physical link, but also we can think about digital links, just like talking about mobility as a service, linking into one application, which is done more and more. Coming to this idea of how we can, like, in this car key, there is so much is in this car key, yeah? And we have to come from, okay, what do I do? What do I have to do to use my car? I take the car key and go down and drive. But using, let's say, a combined way of mobility, we have to find, let's say, something close to that, which takes over the booking and the payment and everything. So this comes to the idea of mobility as a service in the sense that you have a kind of package, let's say. You enroll in a certain package, different levels, and everything is included in that. Your public transport, car sharing, everything is in that. And everything, let's say the provider, this is the company WIM, for example, they do all the payments. So they pay the public transport provider and everything. But you have one single point of access, coming pretty close, I would say, to the car key, with the only difference that you can use a taxi, city bike, and much more other modes even. Just some ideas. And then the harder part, maybe for sure, it's about money also. So how much does it cost to take this multimodal way to come here? Think about added services, for example. How do I organize my shopping trips then if I don't go with the car? So I need certain points to pick up maybe my shopping, which was delivered there by the retailer. So a lot of things to think of, and also again talking about marketing. So how do I communicate these alternatives which are already there in certain points also? Yeah, so that's it actually. I hope there was some food for thought. Check our social media channels where we are quite active most of the time. Twitter, that's myself also, so I'm doing Twitter. And yeah, I hope I'm on time. And we have enough time, I think, for questions.
So you mentioned how it's really important to have such a digital application that guides you from taking your car to where you can then take the bike, etc. And right now, a lot of these big companies, such as Uber, for example, what they're doing is, I think in California, San Francisco already, you can see not only Ubers, but like their scooters, the bikes, and also they now have the public transport. So my question to you is, do you do research, or do you have any concerns about how to avoid just having these single super companies and instead having the market more fragmented, instead of just having Uber controlling entire mobility in one single city and controlling the full market and prices?
Well, then we talk about regulation on the one side, yeah, how these companies can be regulated or not. Talking about bikes or scooters, for example, in Vienna we have quite strict regulations. So per company they are not allowed to have, I don't know the exact number, not more than 1,000 scooters, and over the whole market 6,000 or something. So this can be regulated because they have to register and all these things. But what is needed is, let's say, this platform above Uber, let's say, and also digital infrastructure. And this is not ready yet in Austria, at least. Yeah, this is this mobility as a service concept. So that, for example, the state of Austria would define certain standards how mobility providers would have to deliver their data on availability of their services or even payment interlinks, let's say. But the state would have to define that. Yeah, so that's why in Austria there is an ongoing process called Made in Austria, where, let's say, in an open stakeholder process, all these interlinks between the single providers and this overall system are first of the time defined. But then the transport providers have to give their data, and it was hard to force them to give that data, but it's easier now because there is an European regulation which now forces them to give that data also. So it's getting a bit easier now, but yeah, so there is this need of a kind of open market at the end, mobility market actually, where everyone can do his mobility as a service application, taking all the data which is there. Yeah, so this will be interesting years, I think now. Yeah, how we will go on in Austria at least. I can mostly talk about Austria in the moment. Yeah. Other like Sweden, they are a step ahead already. Yeah. Next one.
How do you ensure? So you talked about creating like this value in like the walkway. So you clean it up to make people want to walk there. For like a shopping center, how do you encourage like a diverse amount of shops? Because you don't want grocery stores.
Yeah. So in the managed shopping street I mentioned, yeah. So there is there's Spar European shopping centers, who together with another partner they rent out all the ground floors and then define a certain mix which is needed for a city there that people don't have to move out. So they decide, okay, this is, let's say, kind of everyday shopping needs we have there. We need a big supermarket. We need some place to get cigarettes, hairdresser and all that. They defined that, and then they regulated the prices for this different, so the rents for these different shops, so that it was possible for the hairdresser, for example, to move into this one shop. Yeah. But on the other hand, for example, the pharmacy is paying quite a lot because they are able to pay also. Yeah. And through that, it was possible to have, if you compare it to other city developments in Vienna, you had a really good mix at the beginning, and people really could, at the beginning, okay, I have the hairdresser here, so yeah, I don't have to search in the area around. I can fix my patterns already on the first day, let's say. Yeah. And I think this was a very important move, and yeah, and mostly works because of this. Let's say, balancing the rents of the single ground floor zones. Yeah. More questions?
You brought up the concrete, the like wide space of concrete. You said something about climate. I was wondering if you could expand on what you're thinking.
Sorry, on?
I was wondering if you could expand on the climate, the bit that you brought up with the amount of concrete.
Yes, so this topic with that there is too much sealed surface is connected to certain, let's say, planning processes, I would say, within the city of Vienna. So they really try to keep maintenance costs really low. This is a bit the logic in which they are working in. And also it's like one local stakeholder, their logic is a bit also that they say, okay, we can keep Seestadt as it is here, very urban, as the whole surrounding is very green. Yeah. I don't always understand that logic so much because it can be also urban if it's green, I would say. But we are pushing more and more now that they would change that. The problem is a bit that Seestadt Aspern is a very windy city, so there's a lot of wind going through. So it's not so much the problem of, let's say, urban heat islands or that the whole district would heat up so much in summer. Yeah, that's why there's not so much pressure on the city itself in the moment. Yeah, but we are now in the spring. We will do a kind of crowd mapping, let's say, with devices to measure temperature and air quality also, together with people living there. So in workshops together, we will, let's say, 3D print these small devices, and they will send, let's say, data to our servers, and then we can get a better picture on that, let's say, together with the people living there. Because I think they're concerned on that, and there are some subjective feelings people have about. Some people say it's hot there, others not in public space. So that's why we try to measure it together with them. Yeah.
Do you guys do outdoor laboratory work in that? Like, do workshops with the...
Yes, exactly. So we try to work as much as possible outside also, together with the local city neighborhood management. So that's also a great thing that we have also an institution there which is called City Neighborhood Management, who actually are a central hub, let's say, to the inhabitants. They help them with all initiatives they want to do, provide them space also. I mean, this is quite a also not a standard thing for other city development districts in Vienna also. Yeah, and we are really close with them. They are partner in our team also, and so we can connect if they do certain workshops outside. We can bring in, let's say, ideas or topics also, which they can link to. Yeah.
Two questions. Yeah. Another way of not ceding so much ground would have been to build higher. Why didn't they do that? And why did they choose such a banal architecture?
Interesting questions. I try to answer them. So regarding the density, Seestadt Aspern is already very dense. So it's also, let's say the basic framework is that there is 50% free space and 50% built space.
Easily double the height of the building.
The question is if that would be a livable city. I mean, we can discuss that. At certain points, there will be much higher buildings. So, for example, the subway station, we don't see it on that picture. There is an 80-meter tower. There will come another one with 120 meters. So at the, let's say, these very dense areas, we will have much higher buildings. But for, let's say, normal housing, let's say, this is already, let's say, I think the border of density also and also height. I mean, yeah, that's another discussion. Talking about architecture, this is, let's say, from my analysis, maybe Stefan want to add something on that, but my explanation for that is always the process how these buildings are funded, because all this is funded housing. So the city is supporting the construction of the buildings mainly through giving cheap land to the cheap ground to the building providers. And the single building providers are under quite big pressure, let's say, to fulfill all the requirements the city is giving to them. So the city says, okay, you need to fulfill social sustainability. So you have to think about how people, let's say, how the neighborhood should work within the buildings. You have to think about sustainability, like ecological sustainability, fulfill certain energy standards and so on. You have to fulfill, I don't know, building standards and so on and so on. So at the end, the building providers have to cut certain costs, and yeah, that's where they cut. It's the architecture at the end, yeah, because the building providers have to reach certain levels of rent to be able to receive the funding, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, also, I read that like around 7 stories is actually like the best, like for the pricing. So it's like the higher, if you go higher, you will actually pay like a higher price per square meter, and so approximately 7 like stories is kind of the best in that sense. It's like the cheapest you can have.
But it's totally artificial. Because it's man-made. So it's just a rule.
Yeah, but I just mean for housing in this it might also be a key component is that they want affordable housing or like, and so that's why they maybe also limited to 7 because if I count it's approximately 7.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that about your question about height. Just my background, I studied architecture, going to uni, and people don't like tall buildings. So livable cities shouldn't be tall. You actually want to have a healthy balance. So that's why I was mentioning that by the train station you might have something taller, but on average cities should be shorter because it just creates and there's like research that it creates a more sort of cozy feeling of the city. So that's why it's also from a point of how will people enjoy the city, you need to keep it actually not so tall to avoid that problem.
So nobody likes to live in New York.
No, that's not necessarily. For example, Russia is a great example. You'll have in Moscow these pockets of outside of the city that are easy to get to. But once you get to it, they're called we call them in Russian word ant houses. So because everybody's living like ants because they get land almost for free, the developers build huge buildings and they all want to build huge buildings. And because there is no balance, they're all just trying to maximize the profit per land that they can get. And you end up getting with 20 buildings that are all 30 stories tall. But so you're there, and because they're also old, built cheaply, so they're not beautiful and they're tall, and it's just these concrete. New York, I think, and Chicago and these cities are more unique examples because they're also built through time and history. But if you're building a brand new city and it's all built at the same time, you don't get variety in age and history and architecture variety because it's all from the same time in architecture. So you end up just getting copy-paste the same buildings that you're walking around.
And even still in the US, I think a lot of people think that a city like Washington, D.C., where there's a limit on the height of buildings, so no building in Washington, D.C. is taller than the Washington Monument. A lot of people think that that's a more pleasant city to live in compared to New York. At least people that I know from New York, like people that spend time in D.C. It's a lot more like cozy and homey and comfortable for people to navigate.
Being from New York City, I can say that it's not desirable to live in a 50th floor of a building, right? The elevator ride, that being a constraint, getting out easily, taking the stairs, carrying when I went to visit Dubai, I know that students were doing empathy work with people who live in those giant towers and just the issues of livability of taking groceries for a family of 5 up elevators, and carrying bags from your, just doing those complicated things.
Maybe here.
I was wondering where your business makes most of its profit and where its largest time and costs are?
Okay, so we have the first misunderstanding. So we, the aspern.mobil, we are no business or company. So we are funded by the ministry, 50%, and 50% comes from the university and some private partners, smaller parts. So yeah, so we now have funding the next 2 years, and then we will see. So, but still, your point is very important, because now we work a bit on, let's say, our business model also, where our future income can come from. We hope now, as the ministry is a green ministry now, we are quite optimistic. And also the ministry said that, she said that she likes this idea of innovation labs. So we see a good future for this kind of research infrastructures. But still, for example, we try to talk to companies, because we are getting more and more interesting also for bigger or smaller companies, for them to test certain solutions they have. For example, 2 companies we work with who constructed new kind of cargo bikes, for example, which could be used by shop owners here, for example. So we link them with the shop owners, set up kind of usability tests with the shop owners, yeah. And we can ask then, let's say, the cargo bike companies to, let's say, pay a certain amount for this workshop or this test series, actually, yeah. Yeah.
About the density, maybe this is in urban planning, it's a far step forward, because 30, 40 years ago, this would have been single-family houses with no public transport, car-based, because this is a typical suburbia example for us. And this means for us in urban planning, it's really a step forward. We start building a high-quality infrastructure for public transport before we start building the houses. This is something what an investment for a city which is tremendous. And so the density is, I would also sometimes agree sometimes it could be much denser, but on the other side, the more dense it gets, the more space I have to create between the buildings, because this is actually depending on each other. So the density is, in technical terms, we have floor space index, I think it's around 2 and 3. And this is actually the density we find in the European city from 1900, which we really like. This is the same density, and so we are really creating this density again. So a higher density is not always the solution. And on the other side, they're expecting here 30, 40,000 people in the next couple of years. In Vienna, this is not the only development area. They have a lot of other development areas, so they are a little bit not sure if they need much more space for that, because I would say to create it's a new city, 30, 40,000 people, it's the own city of itself. So that's why they are not really going to the maximum density.
Yeah.
I missed some of the questions, but
Hi.
how about accessibility, especially for people with disabilities? Is this planned in the architecture or in the design?
Yes, so I would say Seestadt is a very accessible city regarding public space. So, like talking about, how to say, like the curb, let's say. So, and the interesting thing is, this easy accessibility makes Seestadt Aspern to a scooter city also. So, if you remember to my first picture, I will go fastly back that you have the visual input also. The pupils going to school, they love to take scooters because, okay. And this goes on, I think, 2 times or something. Because, yeah, everything is flat. You can easily drive through every area and no need to jump over certain areas. So this is taken care of for a lot. Still, there is like one institution working there. They're called ISOTI, and they're working for now with blind people, for example, which is quite interesting. So they use Seestadt Aspern also as a test area for a kind of new code for, let's say, tactile systems, because now tactile systems, they only show, I think, directions and maybe certain points of interest. And they try to find a kind of Morse code, let's say, going through that you can bring in much more information. But it's not an easy thing that they can do now, because they have to talk to big let's say, standardization institutes or, let's say, institutions for blind people who are standardizing this language, let's say. It's not an easy game they're doing. But yeah, so there's some research happening on that actually also. So they would be, let's say, but they are like in Seestadt Aspern, let's say, how to say, at least we don't, let's say, experience them or see them, let's say. So they're not visible, or I think the district is not interesting for them to stay around, as there are no institutions supporting them, for example, out there. They're mostly in the more core part of the city, like places to sleep overnight and so on. They're all in the city in the moment, yeah. So basically they would be, but still a good question is, like, I don't know, we could not reach them, yeah. I mean, we would have to talk to the city neighborhood management, but as there is, let's say, no active street work or social work going on, only for young people, there is a youth point, let's say, this would be for sure a blind spot, to be honest, yeah. I mean, I think I observed one person over the last 3 years, which I could say that most sure it was a homeless person also, yeah.
What about opportunities for unskilled or low-wage workers? Is this like a viable option for them to live in, or is there any type of occupation that they can have in this?
Yes, so as I told, it's social housing. Although I don't know what pops up in your mind if I say social housing or funded housing. In Vienna, this means that quite average earning person, I don't know the exact numbers, maybe you have it in mind, could live there also and get this funded housing and cheap flats also. Yeah.
So is there occupations to be had there, or could I commute to the city?
So the jobs are not yet there, let's say. There is one factory where I think there would be also job opportunities for this kind of people, let's say. But still, Seestadt Aspern is a bit behind regarding the places to work, but the goal is to have 20,000 people working there, and also not to have, let's say, 20,000 business-related or let's say service-oriented businesses, but much more also producing companies. So that's the interesting situation here, that we have on the east part of Seestadt Aspern, we have one of the last areas in whole Vienna where productive companies could actually also take place also. So this is very special. So I think at the end, if the whole plan goes through, it would be a quite good mix also regarding jobs, I think, yeah.
How did you get into the work you're doing now?
Me, myself.
Yeah.
Basically, 5 years ago, I started in an exploratory research project which worked on another mobility lab in Graz and in Styria. So this was my first experience with this kind of lab thing and so on. And I worked there for 2 years and get my first experience. This was just exploratory, so not so much funding, trying out some participatory methods. This was my focus back then. We did some mobility expeditions in Graz and so on. And during that work, I got to know Professor Berger, who is the project lead also of aspern.mobil lab. And I think he could observe me, let's say, on the way a bit. And then when I finished, or I think some months before I finished my studies, he asked me to be coordinator of the aspern.mobil lab. Yeah. So good coincidence that he was observing me already. Yeah. So this was.
Do you live there?
No, I don't live there, and I also don't want to live there, to be honest. I think it's a great place, a really great place, maybe even the best place to live in Vienna for young families with children, young children. It's really amazing for that. But yeah, I think I would miss I really now live in the real center of Vienna, so I would miss grown urbanity. I mean, it's going better and better, but still I think not in the moment.
You mentioned that you give like a welcome kit to
Yeah.
new tenants. Do you have a platform or some channel to communicate like relevant news of the city?
Yeah, so there's a blog. It's called meine-seestadt.info. But I never heard clear data about how much this platform is really used. And I also would not call it a platform because it's only a blog, so only one-way communication at the end. Seestadt Aspern is really active on Facebook, I have to say. And I would say much more than other city districts because you have this clear borders and so on. I think there are 80, 85 Facebook groups just about Seestadt Aspern. So on any topic, you name it. Walking with dogs, making hairstyles for our dogs, single groups. And also there's one Facebook group which is really strictly moderated, so there are only inhabitants in that one. And there are, I think, around 3,000 people into this one single Facebook group. So it's half of the people living there. And I think that's a quite good share, yeah. So So these groups are also for our work a very important communication channels actually in the moment. Unfortunately, Facebook. Yeah.
What's the most effective way you've been able to involve the inhabitants in spatial planning, or have they been a part of that?
So I have to be precise on that. Our role in the aspern.mobil is not classical, involvement in planning processes. Yeah. So we are at the innovation part of all of this. Yeah. So at a certain point, we have to say we have to stop our work and say, okay, this goes to the city of Vienna. This goes to planning companies who are doing this classical planning processes. So for example, if there is the new part built in the north and they do a public consultation and a public event for that, this is not our business. We will be there. We will, let's say, also give our inputs maybe, but still this is not our role. So it's important to understand that we are on this innovation side somehow, and there is a gray area in between always, yeah. There was a question still there, I think. You took your hand down, or it's finished, okay. Okay.
High-rise building discussion, but I think.
Okay, thank you. I think one is missing still, but I don't remember where. Okay. I will be there today whole afternoon, like being in any of the workshops. I don't know where it makes sense. Also today evening and tomorrow morning. So just feel free to come up to me and let's have a chat. Yeah. Thank you.